Hey, good morning, everybody. It's 10:30, Monday, January 22nd, 2026. Yeah, I'm in Tempe, Arizona, walking around my neighborhood, going through the park in a second or so. I really like my neighborhood. When I moved in here, one of the reasons why I moved in here is because it had access to, well, there's 3 freeways within 2 miles of where I'm at. There's ASU right down the street, about 5 miles. South Mountain is 3 miles. Well, you're looking at me, it would be, let's see, west. The sun's right there, so it's right over there. And, which is one of the top ranking places to go ride a bike, with pedal power. And their trails there are ranked from beginner to expert, and for good reason too. I was using that to train for Spartan races a few years ago, mostly to see if I can, because challenges is what it means to be an American. Being able to push yourself, have an idea, work your ass off towards the idea, and see what happens. Not all ideas are good ideas. Some ideas are just at the start and, need some watering and some gardening tendencies to make it grow and prosperous. And, one of the things that, now getting back into science. Now, in science, they're saying that, like 97% of the human genetic code, DNA strand, or whatever, however they want to measure it. They're saying that 97% of it is junk DNA. Well, first off, God doesn't make junk. Second, it's more of an expression of your limited understanding of the world you live in because of the understanding that you have in the 3D world. If you're seeing it as fatty acids, protein building, and and blue eyes and blonde hair and purple skin, when it's a lot more serious than that. Now, the reason why they call it junk, so people don't spend their time on it. The reason people don't want to spend their time on it is because it's a form of manipulation. Because if you're telling somebody this is junk, this is junk, this is junk, this is a waste of time, then you're not going to put forth the man hours, the finances, and the elbow grease into it because you don't give it value. When in reality, it's the most important thing you need to learn. So we know about 3%, which is the 3D world. When it talks about history, there's a lot more in our genetic span, in our DNA, for example. And I'm literally writing a book called The Science of Spirituality. And it gets into quantum dynamics, quantum particles, and, quantum this, particle physics there, and, goes over a lot of things. And it starts off small. The smallest of the small, and then it gets bigger, and figuring out where all of the bells and whistles are. So yeah, that's a little bit of science, but take in consideration that we are a very young species. We've only acknowledged conscious evolution in 1776. When the founding fathers, we got tired of the British bossing us around or being governed by somebody else overseas. British Empire, they owned the planet. And we were the first country to form a country and defeat the British. Now, spirituality and science. Now, obviously, it's going to talk about religion. Now, religion, generally speaking, it goes over human history and an interpretation of it. Now, if we're going under that, then that would explain why we have such strange ruins, like the pyramids from all over the world that happen to be on a certain latitude line, and people want to dismiss it. Now, there's a difference between dismissing as much as possible so you can stay focused on a given subject, which is viable, because if you want to do good in school, you want to cut out the noise. You don't go out and party. You don't go out and whatever. You want to be a scientist, for example. You pick a field. You find something you're interested in, and you go after it. Unfortunately, the education system has been compromised because people are not challenging the teachers. The teachers are grumpy, rude, and I mean, this is what my experience has been for the schools. When I was in fifth grade, there would be a 3-day weekend for some reason, and to come back either a Monday or a Tuesday, from a boating trip, and have bruise and scrapes and whatever. Be talking to your friends about catching the fish or throwing your brother off the boat or whatever, and then the teacher would say, "Where'd you get those bruises?" My response is, "I was at the lake. I have no idea. I'm at the lake." You're out in nature doing stuff, playing around, being kids. The teacher took that as child abuse. Like, how fucking stupid do you have to be to make that kind of a conclusion? So the education system was a toilet at that young age, especially since you can't sit still. They shove medication and start labeling you all kinds of psychosis issues. Bipolar, schizophrenic, ADD, whatever. When humanity has been walking around, up and down, climbing trees and bouncing around, and whatever knowledge that they have, they share to the next generation, which is usually where family dynamics is. Fathers taught their children, and then their children taught their children on whatever craft that they're working on. Normal. But when you add conscious evolution to it, now you got freedom. Now, freedom provides a lot more ways, which can be scary. Freedom is kind of scary because now you're available to learn new things. You're able to challenge your ideas, question authority, question your belief system, question everything, which is how science is. Like the First Amendment, for example, it seems to be all over the place, like hate speech. Well, when I was dating an astrophysicist, now this girl was hot. She was like the hottest female I ever laid eyes on. And she had a PhD in astrophysics. She would look at a telescope and look at the stars and, talk about physics and stuff like that. I'm a biologist. I study animals, more specifically ecology. How animals, plants interact with each other in a large system. And how, the food system works, how this works, how one affects the other, how everything is intertwined with each other. That's what I loved about nature. I was a vet tech. It's one of the most traumatizing jobs out there. And when I was a vet tech, I'll get to that in a second. So I love nature and everything like that. And I was talking about all the stuff that I love about nature and this and that. And she would get pissed. She'd call me a racist and all kinds of stuff. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense. And now, mind you, this was like 2016, 2015, before, when we had that lady and the other, when we had the Clinton and the Trump, what chaos was just starting. One's busy name calling every name in the book, which holds no value because you don't even understand the definitions of the words that you're using. Racism means hatred towards a group or an ideology or something. When you're talking about how you appreciate other stuff, or the inclusion. Inclusion means that we want your thoughts here so we can talk about it. So we can figure out how does this affect different strategies, different tactics, different futures. You know? America is about limited government. Not bragging about more laws, not making the tax code more confusing when it shouldn't be there in the first place. If we're homeowners, then we should be able to own our own homes and not have some pig steal it from us because of extortion fees. Extortion. For a gun to your head to make payments on something that shouldn't even be there. So people can lose their $400,000 house, $500,000 houses over a $500 tax bill. That is no different than a person walking into your house, stealing your TV and everything in it, raping and murdering your children, and then leaving. And then, when you call them out on it, they send the military on your ass. And besides, the definition of retarded is to hinder, restrict, and prevent forward movement. So by definition, the value of government employment is retarded and unconstitutional, because we're supposed to talk about science. We're supposed to be expanding our consciousness, expanding our creativity. We shouldn't have federal organizations dominating and violating people's personal freedom. Corporations so greedy that they're willing to have a bug and propaganda. Take healthcare, for example. You go to the doctor for like a knee injury or a back thing. They prescribe you medication. The medication is not there to cure. It's just there to tamper the symptoms and not the main diagnosis. If you have a back issue, it could be as simple as stretching, which is standard body maintenance. It could be that you just twisted something wrong and there's a lack of oxygen, which is causing stress. My research suggests that pain usually comes from a blockage of oxygen, like bed sores. You're lying on a bed for days on end. You're not moving. You're in a sterile environment. There's no reason why you should have lacerations, which is lack of blood flow. So I've said a lot of stuff. I hope a lot of this stuff makes sense. But back to I'm all over the topic because it's a big issue and it's hard to grasp. But remember, science is about questioning what it is that you're learning. Does this make sense? Well, string theory. String theory can be related to the soul because it travels through the dimensions. It's a good hypothesis. What if in the math says that there's more than 3 dimensions? You got 4, 5, and up to 12 in some cases. Well, if those are actual real, you're not going to be able to notice them anyways because they're forces outside of your control. Like the difference between walking on the street in on a 2D plane versus being able to fly like a bird. Now you got 3D space to live in. Now the bird can see what you're doing, but you can't see what's on the other side of the fence type thing. So we've got a lot to do. We're closer to world peace than anybody realizes it. And, if there's a problem, write it out, figure it out, and figure out what's the awesome sauce. What does your heart say? If you're independently wealthy and you're living in a big house, and you're living in a big empty house, all by yourself, take that time for peace inner reflection, the good, the bad, what you want to bring in. That is your time for peace. It's time for stillness. And from what my research is suggesting, that's where you get connected with the higher beings. God, for example, angels. You know, they want you to sit and be quiet and still, as opposed to being all up and doing and, you know, getting your emotions all in the body, whatever. Sit back, relax. You've already done amazing work, which is why you're independently wealthy, living in a big house. All right? You've done a lot of things. Sit back, regroup, ground yourself, and regroup. It's amazing. Take that time for peace. I know it's hard and painful. I'm a turbo. I love this shit, but I've been sitting and relaxing. I mean, it takes time to sit back and relax it enough to write a book. And then work on some other fit science and stuff. Not only do I got a book, but it explains on what the whole weirdness of the world is. And I also got an activity that goes with it that teaches how to recycle, how to think, how to be a family, and to bring things together. All right? I am an agent of world peace and multi-planetary, healthy planet, healthy multi-planet. And planting a tree provides life for the birds, and for everything else. Plus, you get good air out of it. Love you guys. Party on. Rock on.